Welcome to another DirectionsMag podcast, co-hosted with our friends at URISA. We're thrilled to have Micah Babinski, Drew Sexton, Rachel Stevenson, and Siobhan Van Allen with us today to discuss mentoring in the geospatial community and beyond. Whether you're a mentor or considering it, they have some terrific insights for us today.
Thanks for joining this podcast. My name is Micah Babinski. I'm a GIS project manager at Elion International. I live and work in Portland, Oregon, and I'm really happy to be your facilitator today.
Hi, my name is Drew Sexton. I'm a GIS specialist for Buckeye Hills Regional Council located in Marietta, Ohio. I am also currently the president for the Ohio chapter of URISA.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Stevenson. I am a cartographer with the United States Geological Survey, and I am currently in my second year with the URISA Vanguard Cabinet, and I will be finishing up at the end of December.
Hi, I'm Siobhan Van Allen. I'm a senior GIS technician at Northwest Natural in Portland, Oregon, and I'm the current president of Oregon URISA's Emerging Professionals Special Interest Group.
Great. Well, welcome everyone, and thanks to Barbary and all of you for being here and making this possible. So let's get into the topic of mentoring. One of the questions that I get a lot, and then I've sort of been mulling over, is what differentiates mentoring from just giving professional advice? I've given and received a lot of professional advice, and full disclosure, I'm signed up for the Oregon URISA Emerging Professionals Mentoring Program as a mentor. So I'm really curious, how can a mentor go that extra mile? And Drew, you've had a lot of experience with geospatial mentoring, so maybe you could start off by talking about this.
So for me personally, I think that mentoring is more so like a long-term professional relationship. Well, I guess it could be long-term or short-term. And it's kind of more of an encompassing, all-encompassing sort of, you're giving advice. You might give project help. You could help students out with career advice or maybe selecting courses. And then there's certain different things that you might do for mentoring young professionals. Like you might want to help them with suggesting that they could get involved with different professional organizations, or if they needed to continue their education, you could suggest things like perhaps doing an Esri MOOC or attending different conferences, workshops, or potentially other educational offerings to kind of bolster that.
Yeah, so it's kind of like going beyond just the surface level advice and sometimes helping out with pretty weighty career and even life decisions. Good. Siobhan, are there any sort of perspectives that you've encountered through your previous mentoring or mentee experience?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that sets mentoring apart from just being professional advice is that it's an ongoing relationship, and Drew spoke to this a little, but it could be short-term, it could be long-term, but it's someone that you recognize as you're having a relationship going forward with that person. Where in my personal experience, I have sought professional advice kind of on a one-off basis from people I trust. I wouldn't necessarily consider them mentors, where it feels the mentor, you have a special relationship throughout time where you can go back to them again and again, using them as a resource for guidance in your career.
One of the things from my perspective is that mentoring, sometimes it goes beyond just having sort of a buddy who gives you advice. My dad is in the GIS industry, and he gave me some mentoring early in my career. And it was really, I got a lot out of it because it talked about, we talked about, well, how do you integrate being in the GIS industry into your life? So beyond just sort of the day-to-day career work type decisions, like how do you actually create a life around working in this industry? So I got a lot out of that. Rachel, I'm curious, from your mentee experience, what are some of the characteristics that has really set that apart from sort of the professional advice you might have gotten from other folks?
So as a mentee, what I guess I always have really enjoyed about my personal mentor is when I started mentoring with the USGS about a year ago, I asked for a mentor in a field that I was interested in developing skills in order to like advance myself to the next stage. So I have a master's degree in applied geography and geospatial science, but I'm really interested in getting an understanding in geospatial development, or geodev. And I had taught myself some of the basics, HTML, CSS, Python, but I didn't really know what it meant to be a developer. So I talked to our mentoring coordinator, and I asked specifically for a mentor in dev. And so as I did the mentoring program with this individual through the USGS, what I really liked was that the focus was on development. It was on, these are the skills that you're going to need to acquire over the course of your career, both technical and non-technical skills, in order to continue to be in this field. I think the most important thing that I've learned and that I've gained from my mentor is that even though the mentoring year program has ended for us, I can always go to that person. I actually just emailed them the other day talking about test plans, which is something that we hadn't had a chance to cover in our 1 year time with each other. So it's beneficial, that you have this, like Drew and Siobhan have been saying, that you have this really strong relationship and that you can go back to that really strong relationship, when you need to ask other more in-depth questions.
Cool. Yeah. And so are you able to apply some of that experience? Because you're a member of the Vanguard Cabinet mentoring team, right, Rachel?
That is correct, yes.
So are you able to apply some of that experience to your work on that Vanguard team?
Yes, I think I'm able to. When we have those meetings and we're talking about, or at least in the beginning when we were talking about what we wanted the mentorship program to look like, I gave a lot of input regarding my own personal experience in the USGS mentoring program, what that looked like, especially expectations around mentors and mentees, right? Like, how many times should they meet? Do they have to meet face to face? Right? All of these questions really needed to be asked and answered, and struggled with, like, what does mentoring look like in 2019, right? We have access to computers and digital technology, and so mentoring has kind of taken on this very different look and feel than what it would have looked like even like 10 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to get sort of into some of the nuts and bolts and how technology can help. Before we do that, though, I was kind of interested to share this study that I read about, kind of talking about the scale of the need for mentors within the GIS industry, and I think within kind of the workforce as a whole. I read an article that talked about how while only 37% of professional men and women currently have a mentor, more than 75% of professional men and women in the workforce today want to have a mentor. So Siobhan or Drew, I'd be curious to know, either in the Ohio region or in Oregon, what is your impression of sort of the scale of the need for mentoring relationships?
Yeah, I would say that there's definitely a great need. There always seems to be like, I guess you would say, a gap between some of the different types of mentoring that we can offer to people, because you need people that have different types of skills. You need people who are cartographers. You need people who can do applications and development. You need people with planning backgrounds, people with environmental backgrounds. And so how do you get all of those people to kind of want to volunteer their expertise really and give back to the profession? And really what it breaks down to is you got to kind of foster relationships. So one thing that we do is we've got an academic partnership chair, and that person's responsible for reaching out to the universities and colleges in the state of Ohio, finding out if they've got programs, any kind of GIS program or GIS courses that they offer, and then let them know that we're here, let them know that we have mentoring opportunities available. And then basically as they start to come in and we see what types of mentors we need, then we're able to kind of go and access our membership. So here in Ohio, we've actually got over 400 members. And so we've got a really large group of people that we can access to say, hey, we've got a need for these types of mentors if this is something that you're interested in. And usually you can help encourage people to do this by explaining to them that, not only is it something that you can use as a really cool resume booster, but you get GIS points. And, there's no greater feeling than actually giving back to the profession. And it's pretty cool to do that. And then kind of another way for organizations that are kind of smaller, how could you, get a larger pool of mentors? And one thing you might be able to do is sort of survey your public, your private, your nonprofit, or your academic institutions that are in the state that have some kind of GIS activities going on, and let them know that you would like to have anybody who's interested in contributing to the profession or giving back the knowledge that they have gained to the younger people.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot. Sounds like you got a ton of interest out there in Ohio. Siobhan, how's it been setting up your program in Oregon?
Same here. So I am coordinating a pilot mentor program for Oregon URISA. This is the first year, and the program just launched earlier this month. So in addition to developing the framework for this program, we also had the challenge of advertising the program and finding enough mentors and mentees to participate. In the last 6 months that have gone into setting up the framework for this program, there was some anxiety about making sure we had enough mentors apply to participate. And it was really encouraging when we looked at the final applications after the deadline, and that we received many more mentor applications than anticipated, which really said to me that we have established professionals in our community who really want to give back to this next generation of GIS professionals entering the field. Some of the people who applied were, kind of your usual suspects who are involved in the professional organization, Oregon URISA and other organizations around the state. But also there are people who I had never seen at any of our networking or social events before who had heard about the program and wanted to give back. So I think that's a good reminder to always kind of cast a wide net and not just go to your normal resources, but really making sure you're reaching out to organizations and businesses that you don't always see at events and social engagements with the GIS community, because there's a lot of people out there who may want to be involved and have good information to bring back to new mentees in the program. So we were really excited that we had such a good turnout from mentors and mentees in our application process. It made the selection process hard.
Yeah, as a participant, I can say all of your events, Siobhan, have been very well organized, and there's just a lot of energy and enthusiasm around it. I'm curious, though, because we're super lucky in Oregon, and certainly it sounds like in Ohio and Colorado, to have like pretty active professional organizations and just a community that fosters a lot of mentoring relationships. If you're someone who is either looking to be a mentor or mentee, and maybe you're from a remote area that doesn't have as active of a professional community, or you're just not hooked in, I'm curious if anyone, any of the guests have ideas of like, where do you look for these opportunities?
I would suggest that maybe people could try to, look for a user group in their area, or look for a school or a university, a college somewhere in your region that you can go to and offer to go there and mentor the students, even if it's perhaps even just stopping in and visiting a class and just talking to the students about, what it might be like for them when they graduate. That kind of thing could be pretty useful, and could also help you get yourself out there, and then you might learn that there could already be something in your area that you weren't already previously aware of.
Yeah, because you've got that Association of American Geographers has that GeoMentors program, which I know is pretty popular, and I think they're sending mentors out into schools and sort of showing people how they can carve a career pathway in GIS. Are other folks familiar with any other options?
I think the reverse of that idea is a good one too. For those of us who already have jobs, maybe reach out to a school and invite students and professors to do a brown bag at your work. Have lunch, talk about what your industry does with GIS, and kind of show them the other side of like being in a workplace and what different opportunities exist there.
So Rachel, from your perspective, both having had some mentee experience and also working on the Vanguard Cabinet Mentorship Subcommittee, what do you think makes an effective mentor? A lot of times people talk about what mentees sort of kind of get out of the process, but what makes a really effective mentor from your perspective?
So I think it's an effective mentor is somebody who is, really willing to listen. What I really liked about my own mentoring opportunity that I had with the USGS was that my mentor really let me lead our meetings, right? I would come up with an agenda of things I wanted to talk about, things I wanted to get more information on or feedback about, right? Whether it was working on an application or learning a new development skill, I was the one to kind of set the stage for, what skills I wanted to gain. That being said, my mentor would often sometimes give me, some more structure to my agendas, right? So if I said, I want to talk about being a developer with the USGS, what does that look like? What does that consist of? What skills do I need? He had a week prior to our meeting, because I would usually send this agenda out a week ahead of time. He would, have a week to say, okay, we're going to talk about these things. We're going to talk about like what the day in the life of a developer at USGS looks like. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about here are the skills that I think are missing from your resume that I think the USGS specifically is looking for, that you need to make a part of your ongoing career education. In the USGS, we call that an IDP, an individual development plan. And so it was kind of like a lot of give and take. I was definitely leading, but there would be times when my mentor would say, here are some other things you really need to focus. So he would kind of, he was like a rudder on a boat, right? So he was kind of giving me direction, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, and I love a fanciful metaphor. So that's a really good way to describe it. I also like what you talked about there, Rachel, because sometimes I think maybe some mentees or some mentors might share in this as well. You can got to get the mistaken impression that mentorship is just a mentor dropping knowledge on a mentee, and so it sounds like you're a really engaged mentee. Yeah. And so I'm curious, how do folks that have run mentorship programs, how do you sort of foster those good relationships, Drew or Siobhan?
I think it's really asking some of the effective questions to start off with. You really want to ask them about, what is their education background, what are their short-term and long-term goals, and then ask them things like, what do they consider to be their strengths, what do they consider to be their weaknesses, and then in doing that, you'll be able to determine, all right, if the person has a particular interest in perhaps being a cartographer, then you can help them look at, okay, so you're coming up upon registration for your classes. What are some of the options available? And then you can help them pick out some of the courses that would help them later on in their career. Other things that you can do then is, obviously, if you're mentoring a student versus a young professional, those initial questions that you ask them will help you to kind of cater the support that you provide them. So if you need to encourage somebody to do things like, when students have their exams coming up, you can engage them by asking them, oh yeah, I know exams are coming up. What kind of projects are you working on? And then in doing that, they can either tell you maybe they're struggling to come up with an idea, or maybe they've already got an idea and you can help them, expand upon that. Or if it's a young professional in the field and you find out that they're working on a project and maybe they're not somebody who's got any kind of development skills, but you can help them by saying, hey, there's this really cool free Esri training course that you could take. It'll give you a little bit of exposure to some programming stuff that'll really help you take this project, do a couple more pretty cool things, and take it to the next level. So I think it's really being able to ask the right questions that will help you be more supportive. And then you kind of also got to be careful to be a little bit more respectful as well, because, you don't want to, I have found myself in a situation where I was mentoring somebody and it seemed like they wanted to know a little bit more about some programming. So I shared with them some additional information and kind of set them up with some framework to start developing their own application on their own. And then it appeared to me, it became very apparent to me that they were a bit intimidated by what I was doing, and they felt like maybe I was suggesting that they had to do this thing. And it was like, well, no, you don't have to do this thing, but I'm just putting it out there that these options are out there. You can explore these if you want to. It's not something that you have to do, but it's still there. So I guess in a way you want to be respectful, be a good motivator, but try not to make them feel burdened or pressured in any way.
Totally.
Sure. Building on that, in terms of what the Oregon URISA mentorship program has done, when our mentors and mentees first met, we had an activity for them to fill out an action plan, kind of a contract with each other, where they spent some time talking about their past and what their goals and objectives are for the future. And we asked them, both mentees and mentors, to write down what they wanted to get out of the 6-month program we have for them. And then based on those goals, we asked them to come up with a handful of concrete steps they could take to work towards those goals. So if someone is looking for a job, perhaps they wanted to create an online portfolio and work on improving their resume. If they have a job, if they are interested in developing programming skills, for example, outline what free resources they could use online to bolster those skills. So they outline what their goals are, what the steps are they can take to work on them in the next 6 months, and then a timeline for them within the next 6 months, with the idea that at the end of the program, they'll be able to have something tangible, be it a project or a new skill that they can share with their cohort. So I think having that kind of contract and framework, and it being apparent up front what the mentor and mentee are going to be working together on for the duration of the program is a really helpful framework for people, so they don't get sidetracked or bogged down in other tasks they could do. All that being said, that is kind of flexible. People's goals and ambitions change through time, so it's not set in stone, but at least it gives everyone kind of a roadmap to hold on to, so they know what the other person is accountable for along the way.
So that's good. So it's almost like you're using the action plan as a tool to ensure that you're not just hanging out and talking shop, but there's real deliverables, expectations, and goals that you want to meet through the mentorship relationship.
Absolutely. We want the mentor and the mentee to get to know each other and build that professional network during the program. But ultimately, the goal is at the end for both the mentor and mentee to walk away with something new to have in their portfolio or their resume, or confidence, soft skills, whatever it may be. We really want to make sure that there is a good takeaway for everyone at the conclusion.
Yeah, cool. So Rachel, how's the USGS mentoring program that you've mentioned you participated in? How is that structured? Like, how do you apply? Kind of how does it all work?
So the program is structured. First off, the program has 2 periods of signups. So you can sign up in the fall or you can sign up in the spring. And the program runs for 1 year. I signed up in the spring of 2018 and got accepted, and the program started in May. And so there's a mentoring coordinator, and she oversees all of the assignments. So the mentee assignments. So she does all of that. You fill out an application, kind of some of the basic information, your name, your career with the USGS, where you want to go, what you would like to get out of the USGS mentoring program. And then, there's some serious questions about like, well, what are you willing to put into this what do you really want to get out of this? What are your goals in the next 10 years career-wise? Where do you want to go? So after applicants fill out that application, supervisors fill out their own application to confirm that the mentee, the person wanting to be mentored, has approval. And then sometime in late May, you get your assignment, and then there's a webinar for all of us to meet, because some of the mentorship programs are long distance because the USGS is all throughout the United States. And some of the mentor program matchups, the matchings, some of them are face to face. So after we do this big webinar, there's a time in the webinar for mentor and mentee to go off into like these side rooms within the webinar structure. And so we start to sit down and talk about like, what do we want to get out of this? What are we willing to put in? How often do we want to meet? All of those logistics are agreed upon between just the mentor and the mentee. The mentor coordinator doesn't have any say in that. Now, that being said, if a partnership doesn't go well, then the mentor or the mentee can talk to the mentor coordinator and try to find a solution. So in that way, they're like a mitigating influence should something happen.
Got it. Sort of there to solve problems if they come up, huh?
Right. And so shortly after the webinar, mentor-mentee partnerships are allowed to start meeting. The mentor coordinator this year gave us all a book to read. I think the book was called Stressed, and we all had to read it. It was essentially a book about like how to deal with stress and how to have a life-work balance type of thing. So we did that kind of as a mentoring community with both mentor and mentee. And then after that, for the rest of the year, I just continued to meet with my mentor one-on-one. So at the end of the year, as the year is wrapping up, they do another webinar, and everybody talks about how their mentorship relationship went, what worked, what didn't work, what are some ways in which the program overall could be improved. And so that's kind of fun. But because my mentor was in the state, we just went out to lunch, which was kind of nice because they're just up in Fort Collins. So my supervisor specifically asked me to track all of my mentor work. So the topics we covered, the time that I spent getting mentored, and sometimes that fluxed because I was allowed to have up to 3 hours of work time during the workday to dedicate to mentoring. So sometimes we'd meet for an hour, and then sometimes we'd meet for 2 hours if I needed to participate in like a webinar that my mentor thought would be beneficial to me. So that was kind of a nice benefit of the mentoring program.
It sounds like a really great program.
Yeah, and then at the end you get a certificate that says that you've been through the mentoring program, and you get a little pin. So that was fun.
Cool.
So that was the whole program in a nutshell.
Yeah, I really like that there's so many of these sort of structured mentoring programs. I'm curious though, let's say you're someone who maybe you're looking for a mentor, you've got someone in mind, but you're not sure that you want to go through a structured mentorship program. I mean, how do you reach out to someone and ask them to be a mentor? I've heard it's best to do in person versus like via email, but I'm totally the kind of person who would like approach someone at a conference and ask very woodenly, like, hello, would you be my mentor? So I'm wondering, what are some ways to break the ice and some ways to appropriately ask someone to participate in a mentorship relationship?
I have a professional mentor outside of the USGS program that I went through, and I didn't ask him. They found me and kind of like took me under their wing. I participate in an online Twitter chat every Wednesday called #GISchat. And it's a whole group of GIS professionals and various different data science types. And so we all talk about geospatial science for 1 hour. And there was this one individual who really, like, when I started grad school, took an interest in me and took an interest in what I was trying to do and how I was trying to get involved in the community. and they just took me under their wing. I didn't ask at all.
Okay.
So there is
The-
that opportunity for informal mentoring.
I don't have any personal experience with that, but I've had many others tell me that that is a very similar experience to what they've had, where they start working with somebody just kind of ad hoc, and it starts to become more of an ongoing relationship where that person is providing advice or suggesting that they start to, get exposure to certain things and that they would have otherwise not, thought about doing. And so they basically kind of informally got this mentoring that they weren't really necessarily even aware of at the time that it was happening. But so I think sometimes it just sort of organically happens like that.
I think why mentor programs are so appealing is that having or finding a mentor organically is often really challenging for people. And it takes a lot of courage or forethought to identify someone in your industry or in your company that you admire as a leader or as a senior level staff member, and then seek out that kind of mentor relationship, where a mentor program does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. That being said, I think it's really valuable to find someone within your organization or industry organically that you would like to learn from. And I think if you do identify someone like that, while I agree with Micah that probably asking them in person is most ideal, I would encourage people to shoot them an email and ask them to go get coffee and get lunch. And maybe you never formally ask them, will you be my mentor? But set up a once a month meeting to go get coffee, catch up on what's going on in your work lives and any questions you have. And you can foster that kind of relationship on your own too, in a less formal way.
Those are really good
Yeah,
ideas.
I think for the most part too, I've never in my, almost 15 years in the profession, I've never met anybody who's been turned off or been real kind of closed off in any way to any kind of question that I asked them about the industry or about, their job and what they specifically did, unless it was something that was confidential or otherwise, sensitive information that they couldn't share.
Yeah, it almost seems like it takes a certain amount of vulnerability to reach out to say, hey, maybe I'm having trouble making a decision. It does take a certain amount of vulnerability, and that's sometimes hard for people, I think.
I agree. I think that is challenging. When I've been in that situation before, I find it always helpful to remember that, most people want to share their experiences with emerging professionals. They're excited that younger people are engaged and interested and want to advance their careers. So it kind of takes it feels like a leap of faith to send an email asking someone to go to coffee or lunch sometime that you're not really close with. Ultimately, I think it's going to be received well, and people want to encourage and foster talent and growth in their companies.
I love that, and it really speaks to the benefit of mentorship from mentors, because we hear a lot about what mentees receive. What else do folks think are like, if you're a seasoned pro and maybe you're kind of like, well, I've achieved a lot in my career, I'm thinking about trying to find a mentee. What are some of the reasons folks should seek out mentees or step up and be a mentor?
I'd say the biggest reason to step up is to just give back to the profession in general. Like, especially if you're older or if you're a more seasoned professional, senior professional, there's a lot of students out there that, you start mentoring them and you start to ask them about what kind of projects that they're working on. And it gives you some kind of insight into something that you weren't already, considering or looking at. I remember I was mentoring a girl, and she was working on a project at the university where she was at to determine if they had, effective lighting across campus. And it was something that I thought to myself, I believe that, this would be something that you could use in communities. I do a lot of community and economic development. So I was able to go back and kind of apply that to some of the things I was doing in one of the communities I was working with.
Yeah, I guess from my own perspective, and a big part of the reason that I applied to be part of the Oregon URISA Emerging Professionals mentoring program was just, beyond the desire to give back and to sort of reflect all of the great advice and support that I received early in my career, was just to soak up some of the enthusiasm of people early in their career, because it's hard. You work in an industry, I think any industry, for a number of years, and it's just hard to keep the original excitement that you had. And so I see mentoring as a way to kind of stay excited, stay engaged, and hopefully be reminded of some of the love and the enthusiasm that brought me into GIS in the first place. So I am curious if anyone here has had any negative mentoring experiences, and how did that change your approach going forward, or any sort of lessons learned that you took away from that? And maybe it's not overtly negative, but just things that happen either as a mentee or as a mentor where you're like, I wish I'd done that differently, or I really could have really wished that had gone better.
I know for me that when I was mentoring someone specifically, they decided that for whatever reason, maybe 4 weeks into the mentoring relationship, I just didn't hear from them anymore. And I would send messages, for every now and again, and they didn't respond to them. And it was like, specifically, I remember that person really, I wouldn't say, wasn't necessarily looking for mentoring. They were more so looking for professional advice or coaching. And once they got that from me, I think that's kind of all they needed, and they weren't really interested in anything else. So in that regard, I just made a point to let them know that it's an ongoing relationship, that if they ever needed me in the future, that they could always come back and reach out to me. Because in my mind, I think some people, I've met some people who are mentors, and they think that, I've got this task, I'm going to mentor this person for 6 weeks. Once it's over, my job's done. And for me, it's not like that. As a mentor, I plan to be available to you throughout your career. I want you to add me to your network of people that you can always rely on should you need any kind of advice in the future, coaching, whatever it should be. And so I think really just making yourself available like that's probably a really good thing.
Yeah, it's important. You don't want to get ghosted by a mentor or a mentee, I'm sure. Is there any risk in becoming too close of friends with a mentor or mentee? It's almost like, could you sometimes run the risk of not getting what you really need out of it?
I was just going to say that for myself, my own personal experience, I've never, most of the mentoring I've done has been remote. So I haven't had that sort of opportunity to get too personal with the mentees. But I suppose I could see something like that potentially happening maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess how you could avoid that sort of thing is, I guess, just kind of, I guess it's up to you how much you want to make yourself available to people. Are you going to let them know that they could reach out to you on LinkedIn? Can they reach out to you on Twitter? Can they reach out to you on Facebook? Can they reach out to you on your work email? Can they reach out to you on your personal email? And so maybe it's, as a mentor yourself, you have to kind of set some boundaries and say, well, I'm not going to invite these people to my personal accounts. Maybe you're just going to keep it strictly professional with them like that. And possibly that's the best thing you can do. But I think there are going to be situations where it's going to be best for you to have more personal relationships with people. It just kind of depends on, I guess, how that relationship continues to bud.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm thinking about my own personal experience where I had sort of a life mentor growing up, not related to GIS or anything, but we got pretty close. He was actually a music teacher of mine, but we were quite close. And I started to think, oh, he's really he's my buddy. And then I remember I would tell him some of the things I was doing, some of the decisions I was making in life, and he would say, Micah, you're making a mistake. And so that was really beneficial to have a mentor who was willing to tell me when I was screwing up, because I think, I certainly got a lot of benefit out of that.
My informal mentor and I have kind of that type of relationship where, I go to them for advice, both pertaining to my life and my whatever, and GIS related things. I mean, we've just kind of built this relationship that kind of has transcended mentoring, right? Where it's now more of a friendship. And I think it's okay because we both work in GIS, but we work in different aspects of GIS. Like I work, well, we're in very different parts of our careers, right? I'm entry level and they're more advanced, right? He's going to be like a manager type level individual, or they are going to be a manager type person. And so, right, the relationship is different. They need different things out of their career than I do. And so we've kind of built this friendship that kind of originally started off as mentoring, but has now kind of transcended that. And because we work in different fields, he works in GIS agriculture. I think they call it big ag or data science for agriculture, something related to that. But that field is drastically different than, working for the federal government, doing citizen science, which is what I do for the USGS. So there's not a lot of concern by either one of us, I think, related to like, are we crossing a line? Is there a boundary that's being broken? Like, it's a healthy relationship that's mutual and beneficial to both of us.
Yeah, that's great. It's an important thing to be able to be honest with one another, to give honest feedback. There's a lot of trust involved, I think.
Yeah, and I think at the beginning of your relationship with your mentor mentee, that's probably where you should establish those kinds of boundaries. You should let them know, what level of confidentiality you would hope that they can provide for you. Because I agree, if you are potentially looking to leave an organization and go to another organization, it might not even just be within your own, but there's camaraderie within the GIS community, and a lot of us, we all know each other. We all know the other people who work for the other organizations, and so yeah, you probably want to establish that level of confidentiality at the beginning.
Yeah, that'd be really important. Rachel, I definitely want to bring up, since we're both URISA Vanguard Cabinet members, and since the Vanguard Cabinet has a mentoring program, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that, because it's not region specific, right? It's accessible almost to anyone in URISA, or how is the Vanguard Cabinet program working?
So far as I understand, the program was launched, I believe at the Esri UC. I could be wrong about that, so don't quote me on that. But the program was launched this past summer, and it originally was piloted with URISA Ohio, as I understand it. And how it works is we have a website that I don't believe we have launched yet. And so we have a website, and so the website directs mentors and mentees to an Esri
Survey
and
123.
so Survey 123, thank you. It asks different questions based on whether you're a mentor or a mentee, and then it shows you, and then the overall website and application have a map that shows you where people are located. And so after you sign up, one of the co-chairs of the mentoring committee within URISA will reach out and contact each individual in order to pair them together. So it'll contact the mentor and it'll contact the mentee individually, and then together when they think they have a pair to make. The program is open to everybody who is within URISA. Specifically, I think you have to be within the Vanguard Cabinet. That was a big conversation that we had at the beginning of the year when we when we really sat down and said, okay, what do we want the mentoring program to look like? And the decision was that our current iteration of the mentoring program, you do need to be a member of URISA in order to have access to that.
Okay, so just now, is it young professionals only? Is there an age restriction or anything based on geography? Like, do you have to be close to your prospective mentor or mentee, or just a URISA member?
So I believe it is for young professionals and students. I do not think that you have to be geographically located next to your mentor. I believe we're allowing for long distance partnerships. Yes, I do believe we are allowing for those types of relationships to exist.
Cool.
Yeah.
So now folks know they've got anyone who wants to be a mentor or mentee, even if there's no program or chapter near you, you've got no excuse. Time to sign up. Drew, do you have any other thoughts, closing thoughts about mentoring from your experience in Ohio and now coming in as the chapter president? Kind of what are some of your thoughts or goals around mentoring?
Really, my biggest thoughts and goals around mentoring, it all comes back to building better relationships with to building a better GIS community within your region, your state, whatever that is. You know, reaching out to your academic partners, letting them know that you're available, letting them know what you do, and you know, it's kind of twofold there, or tenfold, whatever you want to call it. In that, you know, if you're providing mentoring opportunities to the students, you're also letting them know when you go to the schools as incoming professionals that they can come to URISA for support, that they can get help from you know, seasoned professionals, and that there's also support there for the universities, because I realize a lot of times there's a disconnect between academia and the professional world, and this is one of the ways that we can really try to help close that gap. And so I think also reaching out to a lot of the organizations within your area that you know, are hiring GIS professionals, if it's engineering firms or if it's local governments, state governments, or whether or not it's a non-profit or whatever it is. It's just getting in there, letting them know that these opportunities are available, letting them know that they are awesome people too, and that there's people within their ranks that have incredible things to share with the community as well, and that they should give back just as much as people should be involved.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like Ohio almost could provide a really good blueprint for other URISA chapters. Maybe they don't have an established active mentoring program. Siobhan, now that your pilot program is underway, what are some of your kind of hopes and dreams for the program, or things you're looking forward to in the next few months?
I'm really looking forward to seeing how the mentees and mentors grow over the next 6 months. We have some events planned for our cohort to get together in the next few months, as well as they've shared their action plans with leadership in Oregon URISA. So we're eager to see how they make progress on their goals and how we as an organization can help support them in reaching their goals. At the end of our program, we offer our mentors and mentees the opportunity to present at our local GIS conference, and they can either share about their mentor relationship over the program, or they can present on maybe a project that they worked on. So I'm excited to see these people's skills grow and have the confidence to share with our larger GIS community what they got out of mentorship. I think ultimately it will be beneficial for our participants in the program, but also for our GIS community in Portland and in Oregon to see the value of mentorship and hopefully watch our program grow over the coming years.
Now, I was just going to offer too that another thing that we've been doing too that I think also helps bolster the mentorship program that we have is we do offer sponsorships as well. So we do a thing where we have a GIS conference every year in the state, and we offer 10 student sponsorships. So students can apply to that. We have a committee that reviews the applications, and selects them based off of their qualifications. And I think a lot of times students who either are accepted or are not accepted become interested in the prospects of obtaining a mentor and growing from there.
It sounds like a great way to create a kind of a positive feedback loop of engagement, not only with that conference or that particular event, but just with the GIS community as a whole.
Yeah, and then another thing too that kind of works out a little bit is that we also provide a sponsorship, sort of like a grant almost, to some of the user groups that are in the state, and essentially it will help somebody within their organization to attend a conference or a workshop or whatever it is to gain some additional, professional experience and development. And I think that also helps to encourage people who might potentially want to be a mentor, just to kind of have involvement and be able to use those resources as well.
That's great. Yeah. And I also want to go back to what Siobhan was saying about her program. Just want to say on a personal level, I am so excited to be a part of it. I've really enjoyed the experience so far. I had a preliminary meeting with my mentee to work on our action plan. It was great. He seems really enthusiastic. So we're going to get that done. And I'm really excited for the next step. I know that I'm going to get a lot out of being a mentor. And so I'm just really pleased with that. Rachel, I was just wondering if you had any kind of closing thoughts about mentorship, or kind of what the Vanguard Cabinet has to look forward to, and kind of how you hope to leave your mark on that program.
Sure. So I think mentoring is really beneficial to both parties, and I think that, I'm really grateful to see URISA coming away with both of these programs that we've mentioned throughout this podcast. I think the program that URISA has created, the Vanguard Cabinet specifically has created, is really exciting. We've really put a lot of hard work into it, and a lot of time and a lot of energy, and I'm really excited to see students and young professionals get a foothold in a really secure and structured way into GIS, into the GIS community. So I'm really excited to see that. And as for my mark, I'm just grateful that I was able to be a part of the Vanguard Cabinet for 2 years, and to give back to the community and to help bring about these new projects and these new programs that we've worked on for 2 years. So that's been really exciting.
Absolutely. Well, Drew, Rachel, and Siobhan, thank you so much for coming on as guests. And Barbary, thank you so much, and all the team at Directions Magazine. It's so wonderful, such a privilege to get to spend about an hour talking about mentoring with you all.